I wanted to go to the local game store. I went with my dad and we bought a nice little starter kit at the time. My dad ended up reading the entire rulebook, teaching me how to play, and I played with my classmates. I ended up finding myself winning and advancing all the way to the top 8 and qualifying for the Pro Tour at 13 years old. And at that point, I was just fully immersed in wanting to go to every major tournament around me. And that's what I did. I was lucky enough to have really supportive parents who found a way to make sure everything I needed to go to, I was there.
Down numbers are 3, and that's gonna do it!
I'm Javier Dominguez from Spain. I'm the 2018 World Champion, and I'm a Magic Pro League competitor. I think what I like most about Magic is that you can play a lot of games, and the games are different between themselves. The game still keeps surprising you. Like, you play the game, and you run into new situations. I really feel the support of my family, my friends, my girlfriend, Spanish community. It means a lot to me because they're always trying to watch every game I play. This support means a lot because I feel like it gives me strength.
I'm Jean-Emmanuel Deprat, 24 years old, from Paris. I'm part of the Magic Pro League. I was taught the game by a cousin when I was 11. Then I started going to a local game store in Paris, and then I started going to PTQs. So after winning any major tournaments like the World Magic Cup, usually the first person I let know is my mom. When I found out I was going to be in the MPL and a full-time professional player, she was delighted. My mom believes that you should work in something that makes you happy.
So Mike Segrist holding his breath, and Francesco says,
Hey, I'm Mike Segrist, and I'm part of the Magic Pro League. I started playing Magic when I was 5th or 6th grade. My stepbrother at the time found like a $20 bill on the ground, and it was next to a game store, and he bought 4th edition like double starter deck. He brought it over to my house, and we played, and I was hooked. It has been a challenge trying to stay at the top levels, and my wife's been excellent in it, and you know, she gives me time to play when she gets home from work. She always knows that I need to stay on top of my game.
I'm Greg Kowalski, I'm 27, I'm from Poland, and I will be playing MPL. I play the Magic with friends, like going to pre-releases, play FNMs. At some point, I had progress in Magic, and now I'm here. I have a great support in terms of parents cheering for me. Even though they don't understand a single thing about Magic, they are still cheering for me. They see standings.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to coverage of Mythic Championship number 3. There's a look at the trophy that our players will be battling for as we work our way towards our grand finals coming up in just a few minutes here in Las Vegas, Nevada. What's up? I'm Maria Bartholdi. This is day 9, and day 9, what a fantastic tournament and a fantastic top 4 we've had today.
And I love that we are going to get the chance to see a third match between these players. Brad Nelson defeated Leveratto on day 2 in order to advance through, and then when they met in winners, Leveratto won, and now they're here again in the final. It's going to be the best of 3 of best of 3s, and then Brad Nelson has to win 2 of them back-to-back to get the championship. Leveratto just has to win 1. I have no idea who has the edge.
I know.
It's so awesome.
Both of these players brought really excellent decks to this tournament. There's a look at Matias Leveratto. He brought Simic Nexus. There's Brad Nelson. He brought Esper Hero. you know, like you said, we've seen both of them do very well in this matchup, and we also get to tell the story of the big underdog of Leveratto versus a giant of Standard, Brad Nelson. But then again, Brad saying, hey, no, I'm the underdog here. I have to win 2 of these matches.
I can't express how much I admire Matias Leveratto's composure throughout all of this. Not just winning all these matchups where he was behind, but also the fact that he kind of botched his game against Brad in day 2.
Yeah, he did.
Had indecisive turns, was kind of going in different directions. Coming back from that in order to requalify and then refocusing, one thing to note in all of these replays, this is the first round that Matias Leveratto played, he's been playing very fast. And you only really do that when you're starting to get into your comfort zone. I think that he may have just kind of psyched himself out when he had more opportunity.
Absolutely. The pressure at this event cannot be overstated, especially for somebody like Leveratto who hasn't had a chance to play on this stage yet. But you've heard him say it, Nexus of Fate is my deck. I love this deck. I know this deck inside and out, and you can see it from him when he plays.
There's a lot of subtlety to how Leveratto constructed the deck too. 3 blast zones, a mobilized district. This game against Shahar Shenhar was kind of one of those ones where you just shrug your shoulders and go, okay, that happens, it's fine, it's all right.
All right, Red's going to do what Red's going to do here, and I have to kind of take my medicine.
And the fact that Matias Leveratto pulled his focus back together in game number 3 and had to, again, navigate kind of an uncomfortable situation. Now, Shahar Shenhar did have to mulligan down to 5 in this game, but as you see, Matias Leveratto pretty much out of useful cards, getting another Paradise Druid, ramping to what, a Root Snare? But still, Matias Leveratto managed to eventually get together the massive number of Wilderness Reclamations, get the flipped search for his Kanta, hunting down, and eventually Shahar Shenhar was forced to concede. And this is the match that, I mean, before we went live,
Everybody
during we were
said,
live,
mono red,
the
mono
commentators were like, all right, well, looks like that match is going to go to Shahar. And then when Matias won, everyone was like, oh, huh. All right, well, I guess we're going to have Matias Leveratto versus Brad Nelson in the upper finals. And again, all the matches that we've seen, most of them have gone to all 3 games. This was the fastest match I think we have had all 3 days.
Blink and you missed it here. And this is once again going to be our rematch here in the grand finals, but Matias Leveratto really took Brad to town here.
Yeah, once you get Tamio Collector of Tales out, and I mean, I like the way that Paul described Esper Hero, that it is a deck about gaining inches. You get a little bit of momentum, a little bit more, and if you don't get that momentum building early, if you cannot disrupt your opponent early, that is going to be lights out.
Yeah, it might be a deck of inches for Brad, but it's certainly a deck of miles with Simic Nexus here, and you can see him with his biogenic ooze out of the board, just able to create as many oozes as you could possibly want, Wilderness Reclamation on the table, a bunch of negates in hand, and yeah, Brad's just got to shake his head.
And if you got the chance to rewatch that upper bracket match, this was some of the most patient, calm play I have seen out of a Simic Nexus player. Leaving up enough time to get these negates in action obviously gave the win, but how did Matias Leveratto do that? Well, on turn 4, with a Wilderness Reclamation in hand, Leveratto didn't play it. On turn 5, with Wilderness Reclamation and Biogenic Ooze in hand, Leveratto didn't play either of them. Waited until turn 6 to be able to make a play. Brad was completely tapped out after playing an Elite Guard Mage, and that's when Leveratto took the opportunity. And it's that sort of line that is so easy to miss. You often just run out the Wilderness Reclamation, shrug your shoulders if it gets picked off, and go,
right,
well, that's okay, I have a Biogenic Ooze. But that kind of patience led to, again, a dominating victory for Leveratto in that second match.
So Leveratto, of course, has fans cheering for him around the world, especially back home in Argentina, where, you know, some of them might be thinking, we're trying to give Brazil a run for their money here. And Becca got a chance to talk to Luis Salvato about his good friend.
Hey there, I'm standing here with Luis Salvato, the current reigning player of the year and a member of the MPL. And Luis, I just wanted to get your take on Matias Leveratto and who he is as a person and as a player.
Well, I know him like since more than 10 years. We travel a few times to play GPs in South America. And he's also one of the guys who delayed me to qualify to the Pro Tour since he beats me in a final, huge final to Pro Tour Hawaii. So I know him very well, and I know him like he's a really good player. So he deserves to be here, and he can take it all for sure.
Let's talk about how your run has been at this Mythic Championship. You played against Seth Manfield. How did that go?
Well, that match against Seth Manfield was insane. Probably the most important match in my life to become Player of the Year. And in terms of this tournament, it didn't go so well to me. I ended up with 4 wins and 4 losses. And I didn't play really well. I realized playing against Marcio that I made a small mistake, you know. I took some risk and he punished me for that. So next time I will prepare better, for sure.
What would be your advice to Matias of how to stay cool? Because you have played a lot, obviously. You are Player of the Year. You've flown all over playing these Pro Tours. What would be your advice?
Well, we talk a lot about this because you cannot experience these type of feelings unless you are in this event. So we talk like, you know, keep the mind like cool, try to play your best. It's still the same game that you play all your life, you know. But I'm really happy because at one point he played against Canister, and I told to him, be careful, because this guy knows what he's doing, so be careful. And at one point, Canister tried to trick him, and he remembered that, and he said, this couldn't be possible. There's something wrong here. So he took other line, and he won the game because of that. So it was like my help to him to get there.
Yeah, you put the cherry on that cake. And it speaks to how important it is to have people that are really looking out for you. And what does this mean for the community of Magic players in Argentina? Because not only you, now Matias and Sebastian Pazzo as well.
Well, I strongly believe that in each country in the world, so there's talented people, really good players, but now with Arena, everyone has a real chance, because a few years ago in Argentina, it was really rough to qualify for the Pro Tours. So, and even when you qualify, you were like alone and so far, and you can't prepare so well. So now with Arena, the situation changed, and well, we are seeing that these new people from around the world playing really good Magic, and well, now we are showing that Argentina has really good players. So of course I love it.
Well, thanks so much for speaking to me, Luis, current Player of the Year. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Becca. Well, that is a look at Matias Leveratto, but what about the opponent he'll be facing? Brad Nelson. Let's take a look at his journey to get to where he is here in our grand finals.
Brad is a professional Kai Budde slayer. Brad Nelson played against Kai Budde in the upper semis to start the day off. And at this point, Brad Nelson was undefeated and had not even really played that much. And we got the chance to see the match start off. This would sort of set the tone for what all these Esper Hero versus Esper Hero matches would be like. Whomever gets that sticky Hero Precinct 1 down, summoning the army of 1/1s to just slowly poke away over the course of the game, tended to be the one to win. Here, I mean, Kai pretty much has it all. Has the big setup with all sorts of units on the field, 3 planeswalkers, and Kai Budde is just so shocked and appalled that he won that game. Oh, disgusted with it.
I love the friendship between these two guys, too.
Yeah.
Testing together before this tournament, and opponents across the years, 10 years ago, facing each other on a Sunday, and here they are once again playing.
And we got the chance to see Command the Dreadhorde be the big swing card. I mean, it's one of the only opportunities that you do have to get a big swing back. Brad Nelson marking the win, forcing everyone to go back to a Game 3. Such close matches between these two players throughout. Both of them with great attitudes. And again, Command the Dreadhorde. Though sometimes it can pull off enormous swings, it wasn't the biggest Command the Dreadhorde. Hero Precinct 1 and Elite Guard Mage. But that was enough for Brad to start slowly building a board, slowly amassing 1/1s, chipping away at the face.
Boom, boom, boom. In come the small creatures for Brad Nelson. And take a look at Kai's hand, yet nothing doing.
Man, these were exhausting matches for these players, no doubt. There's a ton of small math that goes in. And unlike a lot of the other matchups, health goes down and up in this matchup. I mean, the amount of life that these players had totals, 30, 35. And again, trying to compute how to do the swings with all the 1/1 tokens. With the 2/2s and the 2/3s in the air, it takes many, many, many turns. So you have to constantly be asking yourself, how am I going to lose? What's the way that I could possibly throw this game away and start to play around all those? Both Brad and Kai do it beautifully, but Brad got the better of Kai in the uppers. Now in lowers,
here
Brad
they are
Nelson
once
and Kai
again.
met again, for the second, third place match. And at this point, Brad Nelson with Teferi, Hero of Dominaria out, and the Hero of Precinct 1's already up and running. Not a lot of options for Kai Budde. Now here is the big danger spot. Command the Dreadhorde is a huge swing card in the matchup, but this is why getting the early momentum, getting the early pressure started is so important, because that Command the Dreadhorde had no value. When you have 2 life total as Kai Budde.
Does nothing.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can go out in your own style.
Sure,
like, I'm going to die at minus 40, yes. But at this point, we see that the momentum slowly seeming like it's building up. Brad Nelson up 1-0. Really doesn't have any options. It's just a pair of Elder Spells there. And I mean, Kai had this in the bag pretty early on. There was not really a lot of hope for Brad in that second game. But once again, Hero of Precinct 1, the hero of this matchup. Small amounts of damage building up, small amounts of damage building up. Boarding in the Elder Spells feels like such an intuitive, such a correct decision in the matchup, but it's very risky when you are in a position like this, where it's just kind of a dead card, and upon playing the final land, Kai emptied everything out and let Brad honorably swing into the face.
And look at that face from Brad Nelson there. What a tremendous victory for him over Kai Budde. I've got to ask the question. Brad Nelson, is he a negligent pet shop owner because he keeps killing goats?
Nice! You did it! I didn't know you were going to make it. That's, oh my God. Everyone, that's perfect. That is the best goat joke. Don't apologize. Good for you.
Oh,
you know,
God.
those highlight clips honestly were pretty long for highlight clips, and they do not even touch on how incredibly long and grindy those matchups wound up being.
We're not going to talk about the... You want me to talk about Magic after that?
Oh, no, no.
Are we serious?
Hi, Cedric. Cedric's here with us now.
It's Cedric.
How long has that goat joke been in the holster there, Maria? I am very, very impressed.
72 hours. You got to let it marinate over the weekend. Bring it out when it's nice and toasty.
True. I do suggest you let that one marinate. Absolutely. Look, these games have been back and forth. They've been wild. They've been crazy. But this matchup is really interesting to me because you've obviously got Brad, who he's so self-depreciating, but he feels like he's favored. This is one of the few times where he's like, I feel like this is really good for me. And he's having difficulty. I don't know what's going to happen. I think the game's going to be really close, and he's got to beat him twice.
Yeah.
That's a lot to ask for.
Excuse me. All right, well, let's bring in Marshall and Paul because they're actually going to be calling this match. Hey, guys, what's up? How do you feel about doing this?
Super excited. Paul and I, of course, we always get a little antsy before these big matches. The thing that stands out to me is actually something that Luis Salvato said about Arena kind of opening the game to the world. You know, now that his countryman is here in the finals with a really good shot to win this thing, I mean, that was all made possible by Arena.
Yeah, absolutely. Now anybody around the world has the opportunity to qualify for this event and run it all the way up to the top. And Leveratto now is in kind of that dream situation. We're talking about somebody who's currently has no losses, so he has one to give. And if he wins, not only is he going to win that $100,000 prize, he's also going to have a one-way ticket to the World Championship.
That's right. All right, Maria, what else you got over there at the desk besides the goat jokes?
I got so many more goat jokes, Marshall. You don't even know.
Oh, that's so
Cut
good.
her off. Cut
Marshall's
her mic.
wrong. He's the wrongest person here. That goat joke was fire.
Thank you, Day-Night.
Loved it.
Thank you.
I know. I'm here. I'm on Team Maria, man.
Well, let's take a look at our bracket to find the story of today here in our top 4 as we head towards our grand finals. There you have it, Matias Leveratto versus Brad Nelson. Somebody up and coming in the game. You heard it there, making Arena to have a name for himself versus Brad Nelson, who certainly already has a name in the game, but no top title.
You know, there's something Marshall said earlier that I can't agree more with, that I get so nervous when we start getting to these final matches. You know, you want to do intro, outro, put me on camera, that's fine. But when it comes down to something like this, where there's so much on the line, I mean, every player who has ever really invested in improving in a game knows all the emotional hurdles you have to overcome, getting distracted, getting stressed out, starting to doubt your own decks, and at the last second you make a change and it spoils the final match for you. I mean, it's so difficult to play at this high of a level.
For Matias, it's just been a coming out party, honestly. Again, 2 Mythic Championships played, literally 2. Getting his start via Arena. He's played a lot of Arena games, and he has played a ton of games with Simic Nexus, as we've told you throughout the weekend. He qualified through the rigorous MCQ online, getting the job done there. His favorite standard card is Nexus of Fate, which, you know what? To each their own. It's not mine, but it's his, and he's the one playing for $100,000 here, not me. So, you know what? I bet he'll probably find some foil ones to frame, something like that. Who knows? What I'll say about his deck and what I'll say about this matchup, as we've talked about it many times, those key cards, Wilderness Reclamation and his favorite, Nexus of Fate, those are the big cards that matter in the matchup, but it's those one-ofs that have played a really big role for him over the course of this tournament. The one Blink of an Eye, the one Mobilized District, only having 3 copies of certain cards where you expect to see 4 of them, most notably Tamio. He's got Nyssa as a win condition, he's got the Callous Dismissal for some flexibility. What's interesting about this matchup is if he can get set up, he wins right away. Day 9. He takes it over and he wins very quickly. Now, do I expect another 6-minute match? I don't think so, but who knows?
But of all people that I've seen over the entire weekend, Leveratto is the one whose plays I'm constantly surprised with the most. Just so good at piloting the Simic Nexus. Brad Nelson, of course, we have seen a ton of Brad's games today. Different story than day 1, didn't see him at all. He'd already advanced to day 2 where he won out. Extremely seasoned player. 40 Mythic Championships played almost, nearly 5,000 arena games. Is playing the brew, the popular Esper Hero brew with a single Mortify, and this card is actually so key in this matchup. Search for his Kanta, Wilderness Reclamation, lots of targets.
Yeah, it's a very, very good card in this matchup where Kai, of course, had Ugin the Ineffable. Brad has this Mortify. That was the only difference between their decks. But again, if you look at key cards, it of course starts with the Planeswalkers of Esper to Ferry Hero of Dominaria, Narset, and of course, Little T to Fairy Time Raveler. Those are going to be some key cards. Starting things off with a Hero of Precinct 1 is ideal, but you want to start the game off with one of those 2-mana spells, be it Hero or be it Thought Eraser, to get an idea of what the opponent is working with. In order for Brad to actually push this to a complete finals, which of course means he's got to win 2 matches, he's got to start there. That's the step. Now again, Brad does feel like he's favored in this matchup. He's been very self-depreciating and humble all weekend long, and this is one of the few matchups where he's like, no, I think this is good for me. I do think this is good for me. And if Brad feels that way, it's hard to argue, but if you're Matias, you're like, bro, I just beat you in 6 minutes. Did you forget? Yeah, I guess you forgot because it was so fast, but like, did you forget? I think I can win this matchup too. These guys are going to just be throwing haymakers at each other. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, day 9, you've been sticking with Brad Nelson since actually day 1 of the tournament. Are you still there?
I'm going to root for Brad in the first best of 3.
Oh.
And then you're going to switch?
And then I don't care. And then I really don't. Like, frankly, both these players each deserve a championship. They're both playing so well. Brad has been conquering MPL. He's been piloting this deck that's quite difficult to be consistent with, and piloting it brilliantly. And of course, Simic Nexus is one of the flimsiest feeling, most overpowered feeling decks. It's very easy to have enormous, easy wins and just never go off. And again, Matias Leveratto has impressed me more than any Nexus player I've seen.
Brad might be staring at a version of himself in the mirror when he sits across from Matias Leveratto. Think about Brad, how Brad got his start in Magic. It was via Magic Online.
That's right.
Way back when. Yeah. And we were like, yo, who's this guy? I remember BDM doing the interviews with him at Pro Tour Honolulu way back when. I was at that tournament. I'm like, this dude got 9th place. Little did we know that now Brad Nelson is Brad Nelson. Matias Leveratto could become Matias Leveratto beating Brad Nelson, and he got here via an online program. Look, it's so easy for, I mean, you've been doing it all weekend long to pick Brad. I want to, but it's almost like, can Brad actually beat him twice? 2 times is asking so much. And as great as Brad is at standard, Matias is maybe the best player in the world at playing Simic Nexus. Give me Matias. I'm sorry, Brad. We've been friends for a while.
The anime betrayal begins now.
I'm really sorry. Well, Please don't message me on Facebook, but I'm going with the other guy.
It's so true. It's been so exciting to watch these players just play so brilliantly all weekend long. We got the chance to talk to them before what will now be the final match of the tournament. Let's hear from the players.
I am Matias Leveratto. I come from Argentina, Buenos Aires. I used to play a lot. Lately, I haven't been playing. Arena brought me back, so I prepare myself and some friends.
My name is Brad Nelson, and I just moved from Roanoke, Virginia, all the way to Renton, Washington. When I went up against Matias on day 2, I felt very good about the matchup, but after that, I squeaked out a very intense win.
Brad already took me down.
I don't know anymore. Like, I think I'm favored.
It's Magic, anything can happen, so we have to wait and see. I like my deck. I feel confident playing it.
I'm very confident in my deck, and I'm very confident in my abilities, but I think that wanting the trophy before actually holding it is detrimental to your game.
The chances are there. I will try to go to win it all.
Oh Oh my, what incredible players. What an exciting matchup we're about to watch. But first, I gotta tell Maria, the goat joke wasn't half bad. Sorry, no. Anyway, let's welcome these players to the stage from Argentina at his second Mythic Championship ever. He is here with the Simic Nexus deck, Matias Leveratto. And the 2010 Player of the Year, considered the best in Standard. Is he gonna walk away with the trophy today? It's the player playing Esper Hero, Brad Nelson! All right, we'll find out what's going to happen after a short break.
And welcome back here to coverage of Mythic Championship III. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. It is our distinct pleasure to bring you coverage of the grand finals here, Paul. Been a long weekend, a lot of play for these players, although a lot less play for one of them. Brad Nelson, after having swept his rounds in the MPL Weekly event, earned his way into day 2, and now he finds himself in the grand finals against relative newcomer Matias Leveratto.
Yeah, I mean, he might be relatively new to us, but he's been piloting that Simic Nexus deck to perfection over the course of the weekend. Now, these players have had a chance to play each other twice now over the course of this weekend. They played once, of course, today and once yesterday in day 2. And yesterday, Liberado suffered a heartbreaking loss where, you know, he was in a really good position to actually win that match. And, you know, had he kind of played a few turns differently, I think he could have actually come out ahead. So, you know, he has to be feeling pretty good about this matchup, given that he probably feels like he could have won that match yesterday, and he also won very quickly today.
That's right. It was not close earlier today. The storyline here, as we set the stage for you and begin our first game, is that this might be the first of 2 matches to watch for our grand finals. It's not as simple as winning a best 2 out of 3 games match here, at least if you're sitting in Brad's seat.
Yeah. And as Cedric alluded to earlier, it's very, very important for Brad to have a turn 2 play. Either are strong, Hero of Precinct 1 or Thought Erasure, to affect the future turns for Leveratto, and here he does have that hero on turn 2.
So critical junctures here in the early stages. Again, Leveratto, having not lost today in the top 4, finds himself in the finals in a situation where Brad has to beat him twice in a row, 2 matches, if he's going to become the champion. Otherwise, Leveratto just needs to take one of them, and he'll hoist that trophy. I'll tell you what, our top 16 coming into day 2 was filled with recognizable names if you follow competitive Magic. The only one that stood out was this man right here, Matias Leveratto, and now he's in the finals and in the catbird seat. He is in that beautiful spot where he has a match to give. It is just unfathomable to think that way. Now here we go with Ferry Time Raveler on turn 3 after that Hero of Precinct 1. Nothing going yet for Matias.
And that was a big turn 3 to Ferry Time Raveler. Brad Nelson actually kept a 2-land hand, needed to draw land number 3 there to play one of his 3-mana Planeswalkers, and this just gives him a little extra pressure to put onto the battlefield. And Teferi does a really good job of kind of keeping Wilderness Reclamation in check, because you can't play Wilderness Reclamation and cast your big instance like Chemistries Insight and Nexus of Fate.
Brad's drawn a Thought Erasure for the turn. You mentioned him wanting copies of that card. Now he's facing an interesting situation where he could cast Narset, Parter of Veils instead, but he's going to go for the Thought Erasure and also, of course, get another Soldier out of the deal.
Yeah, and he now has the option of taking either Wilderness Reclamation or Blink of an Eye. Probably looking to take the Reclamation here.
It's the scariest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Blink of an Eye, however, is a nice answer to those very disruptive 3-mana Planeswalkers, but yeah, you just don't want, I mean, one of the key cards in this deck is Wilderness Reclamation. It just gives you such a mana edge, so it looks like Brad doesn't want to give Leveratto that enchantment.
As you mentioned, the Teferi Time Raveler doing some amount of work against the Wilderness Reclamation, but it's just so scary, that card. We've seen it just do so much stuff.
And of course,
bingo, baby.
Hand Disruption can't prevent good top decks here.
No, that is a classic meme in Magic. That's why I put it in my deck, and Brad says, all right. But the truth is that the Wilderness Reclamation is not devastating at this point in the game.
Right, because Leverado doesn't really have, you know, great sources of card advantage here. He doesn't have a Tamio or a Chemistries Insight. And Brad also has 2 highly disruptive cards in the matchup. Not only Teferi Time Raveler, which kind of shuts down what Reclamation can do, he's also got a Narset Parter Veils, which prevents Leverado from digging through his deck.
So things looking actually beautiful for Brad Nelson here. He's got 2 disruptive elements plus a clock. That's the recipe.
Yeah, this is the ideal start. This is what you want from the Esper Hero deck here, because if you just try to lean heavily on the Planeswalkers, I mean, you're giving the the Simic deck plenty of time to kind of sculpt answers, you know, get that Blast Zone into play, kill those 3-mana Planeswalkers and go off. But having that turn to Hero Precinct start completely changes the way the game's played.
Yeah, and this game looks really rough here for Matias, because even if he wants to try to resolve 1 relevant Root Snare, it's going to take a blink of an eye plus a Root Snare on upkeep, or at least before Teferi hits. That is a lot of work just to cast a Root Snare.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Liberado is probably going to be casting this Narset Parter Veils. Narset doesn't draw cards. It actually just lets you look at the top 4 cards, so it will not be disrupted by Brad Nelson's Narset on his side of the battlefield.
Yeah, Narset plays nice with other Narsets.
Yeah.
It's nice. All right, so there she is, hitting the battlefield. Immediate minus. It finds a Nexus of Fate. That is one piece of the puzzle, though right now it doesn't look like it's going to get the job done.
And, you know, Leverado still has a turn or 2, given that he's sitting at 11. There's only 4 damage coming in. But if we take a look at Brad Nelson's hand, we've got a pair of Oath of Kaias. So we might see Brad end the game with a few burn enchantments.
It's our favorite, Paul.
Yeah.
the Esper burn deck. Yeah, Oath of Kaya going upstairs and hitting the life total of opposing players has been quite relevant throughout the course of the tournament, more often than you'd think. Though generally speaking, that effect is reserved to kill creatures and Planeswalkers.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I wouldn't expect all the Oath of Kaias to necessarily stay in this matchup.
All right, so it looks like Leverado feels like he wants to take a turn off here from taking damage. This also allows him to protect his Narset. So his lands are going to untap, and then he has the ability to cast a Root Snare now, finally, thanks to Ferry Time Raveler being off the battlefield. Ooh, the miss there with Narset. That doesn't happen very often.
That's the first miss we've seen, at least today.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Huh, some lands in an Elite Guard Mage aren't going to get the job done there, so Brad has to just survey the scene and see what he wants to do.
Yeah, I imagine he wants to try to get that Narset Parter Veils off the battlefield, so I would expect him to attack in with Hero Precinct 1. The Narset can find Leverado all kinds of great answers. But of course, we know Liberado is going to prevent that from happening with that Root Snare. He's not going to get too many opportunities to cast that because it is very likely for Brad to fire off that Teferi Time Raveler that was bounced on the previous turn.
So Narset takes no damage this turn, and there's land and... Oh, Brad's thinking. That Time Raveler just gives him such a good insurance plan against so much of the broken things that Matias can do.
Yeah, it could
gotta be tempting.
Yeah, and I could see Brad actually casting Teferi Time Raveler to just bounce Wilderness Reclamation, just to kind of
double trouble.
Right, just spend a little, make Liberado just spend a little more of his mana. He will not be able to draw a card, however, because there is Narset on Liberado's side as well.
Oh, ooh, there's Callous Dismissal. That could open the door for a one-turn explosion. The question is, does Matias have enough time?
Oh, wow. So this is really interesting. So now Liberado has access to... Okay, he doesn't have enough mana to actually cast Wilderness Reclamation, Callous Dismissal, and Nexus of Fate. He's running the numbers right now. He'll have 6 mana after he does that. Because if he had another land, one thing he could have considered doing here is play Wilderness Reclamation, cast Callous Dismissal, bounce to Ferry Time Raveler, untap, then play Nexus of Fate. But he is 1 mana short.
Wow, I tell you what, that play from Brad Nelson last turn is paying dividends here by locking up a bunch of the mana from Matias by bouncing that Wilderness Reclamation.
That was really big.
It's limiting him. And this game will be over in just a couple of turns if Brad Nelson has his way.
Yeah, Brad Nelson, I mean, he's representing here an attack for 5 damage with a pair of Oath of Kaya's in hand. If he draws land number 6, that could be it.
Can I play Reclamation?
Huh?
I'm playing Reclamation.
Okay.
Again, Matias is required to verbally announce that he's going to play Wilderness Reclamation so that Brad can set any necessary stops to interact with it before the trigger goes on the stack. In this case, though, the Teferi's doing a pretty good job, and Brad's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but given that the Teferi's in play, Liberado can't really do anything here.
Yeah, Brad's like, fine.
So if Brad Nelson...
If he finds a land,
that's
it's
it.
a drowned catacomb off the top of the library, and Brad has enough for lethal.
And there's nothing Liberado can do because the Ferry Time Raveler's on the battlefield.
Look at this. Brad's doing the quick count here, and he says 2 plus 5. 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is plenty. And there's land. And once this first Oath of Kaya hits,
just making sure he doesn't tap that
the
second
white source.
isolated chapel.
Yeah, that's right. And Leverado's going to see the writing on the wall once it goes upstairs. Oh, this can't be good news at all. And a second copy of the Oath of Kaya. You can see the disappointment on his face. But that is game number 1 going to Brad Nelson. He has a very tall mountain to climb if he's going to hoist that trophy. He's going to have to beat Matias twice. And I don't mean games, I mean matches, but he's one of the good here.
Yeah, Brad choosing to bounce that Wilderness Reclamation was so key. Had he chosen not to do it and maybe play something like an Oath of Kaya and bounce the Oath of Kaya just to try to get more damage in, then Liberado had actually enough mana to cast Nexus of Fate and potentially go off with that Tamio in hand.
All right, now we start to get into the sideboarded plans here. Broad strokes speaking, Paul, which deck stands to gain the most from sideboarding?
It's absolutely going to be from Brad Nelson's side. The reason being, in Game 1, Brad has a ton of removal spells in his deck. You're talking cards like Hostage Taker and Tyrant Scorn.
Which, by the way, he had in his hand that game.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and frankly speaking, in this matchup, those cards are basically dead cards. They don't do anything, and the more dead cards you have, the worse that matchup becomes. But after sideboard, Brad Nelson can now replace all those cards with highly impactful interactive spells. Cards like Duress and Dovin's Veto go a really long way in this matchup.
Okay, so Brad Nelson up a game. Of course, we're going to have Leverado on the play this time, and he's got a Snap Keep.
Oh, and Brad with another great hand.
Yeah, I will say a Snap Keep, though, yikes, not a whole lot going on with this hand. 2 5-drops to look forward to here for Matias.
And Brad's got the basic there. So yeah, he has turn 2 Hero Precinct 1 followed by Thought Erasure Duress on turn 3.
Jeez. I wonder if Leverado is just going to fire off Callous Dismissal.
He might. I mean, it's going to buy him a good amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, he might be concerned about the 3-mana Planeswalkers, but his hand actually plays pretty well against Teferi and Narset, given that Biogenic Ooze and Nyssa are just decent win conditions by themselves.
He's got 2 copies of Blast Zone in his hand as well, which we've seen be critical in the late game stages while he's going off. But here in the early game, it rarely matters.
Yeah, and I love this tempo play. It just gives Liberado just a little bit more time here.
So now Brad's going to do a cool play here. He's going to play Duress first, which leaves him the option of casting Thought Erasure if he needs to, or just replaying the hero. But now he's got a lot more information.
Yeah, this is also somewhat interesting. He could either run out the Hero Precinct 1 or cast Thought Erasure to ensure that he gets that Biogenic Ooze. There is a chance that Liberado draws Negate off the top here, and if Brad sets it up with Hero Precinct 1 and then casting Thought Erasure next turn, Liberado can go Negate into Biogenic Ooze.
Yeah, another card is Tamio that could prevent that Thought Erasure from happening. Now, again, he would have had to draw it off the top of the library, but these things happen, although they didn't hear it. It was a forest drawn for Matias. So he passes the turn back, and once again, Brad Nelson is starting to advance his game plan. He has an answer in Thought Erasure to that Biogenic Ooze, and that is going to leave Leverado with nothing.
Yeah, beautiful start here from Brad Nelson. This is exactly what he needs to win this matchup, and even if he does win here, he's going to need to do it again.
He must have been very relieved to steal that first game. And in he comes for 2.
Get that second charge counter on Blast Zone to be able to wipe that Hero Precinct 1 off the battlefield.
Hey, if you're going to flood out, at least have lands to do something. And Leverado does have that. He's got a Memorial to Genius and a Blast Zone.
Yeah, I mean, if he uses the Blast Zone to get this Hero Precinct 1 off the table, I mean, he does have a good amount of time here.
Yeah.
Brad's not going to have a lot of pressure. Of course, if Brad draws land number 5, Teferi by itself can also kind of run away with the game.
That's right. Land number 5 off the top of the library for Brad Nelson would be fantastic.
Ooh, interesting. Considering an attack here with the token, which was a little surprising.
That's pretty frisky. I like it. Now, he is incentivized to just crack this Blast Zone now, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing to consider is maybe you want to save it for potentially a 3-mana Planeswalker, but he does have the backup Blast Zone in hand too. But maybe he's more interested in getting to land number 6 so that he could crack Memorial to Genius to start drawing some action.
You know, it's interesting because if I'm in Brad's seat, I'm going, wait, you had a chance to take out my hero. In fact, you even took a step in that direction by putting the second counter on Blast Zone. You thought about it for a long time, and then you didn't.
Yeah.
He did draw land number 5, but perhaps fearing a negate, he's decided to just cast the Teferi Time Raveler rather than the Hero of Dominaria off the top.
Yeah, this also gives him the option of keeping up D-Spark in case Leverado top decks something like a Biogenic Ooze or a Nyssa who shakes the world.
So a nice mitigating play there for Brad Nelson. Gets another card in his hand, and look at this. He actually drew Hero of Precinct 1, but he's going to value keeping that D-Spark available higher. And of course, the Blast Zone on 2 is another deterrent to casting out a second copy of Hero. Though, as we see, Blast Zone goes up to 3 on end step. That Teferi more important, and Brad is rewarded for his patience here, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
That's
and
Wilderness Reclamation.
It's a Wilderness Reclamation, but Brad has multiple answers here. We have that D-Spark in hand, and of course the 1 copy of Mortify. You know, Kai was playing the Ugin, but Brad has the instant speed interaction, an additional instant speed interactive spell to deal with a card like Reclamation.
I am playing Reclamation. Yeah.
So Brad says, yeah, just let me set a stop right quick.
Let me D-Spark this real quick before it gets here end step.
That's right. So land, and then Matias says, go to my end step. And Brad is going to say, absolutely, under no condition are you going to your end step. He would like to use the Mortify, but you know what? D-Spark will do the job just fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I wonder if Leverado is kind of at this point wishing that he fired off that Blast Zone on 2, because now Brad Nelson has 2 additional tokens on the battlefield, and now he's on a 3-turn clock.
Right, he could have been facing down a 1-1 here, though he does have a lot to handle here, Matias, because the Teferi Time Raveler is a major issue that prevents him from going off. And you know, sometimes you see the Simic players, they'll take a line that says, I'm just going to ignore your creatures because I'm going to build for 1 critical turn. And it looks like that's what he was trying to do, but it doesn't look like it's going to work out this time for him. An opt off the top of the library is going to get thought erasured away at instant speed, and Brad Nelson is very firmly in the lead at this point. He's got, what, 7 power on the battlefield versus 10 life?
So yeah, we're looking at a 2-turn clock here, and I just can't think of anything that Liberado can piece together here to come back from this. Oh, and the Dovin's Veto will surely lock this up.
Right, Dovin's Veto, another insurance plan, and we see some of the sideboard cards come in, but Brad Nelson has had his way in this first match of our grand finals, and it has not been close. He has made his presence known, now knocking Leverado down to 3 and looking very likely to set up another match to decide our champion.
Yeah, things playing out very differently this time around compared to what happened earlier today. Brad Nelson with kind of the ideal start both games. Hero of Precinct 1 plus Disruption plus, of course, the Planeswalkers.
That's right. Here's an opt for Leverado. This is his last chance. He's going to put Paradise Druid on the bottom. And he needs to find something amazing, and I don't think he has it. That certainly isn't it, and that is match number 1 going to Brad Nelson.
No one told us to just play again.
To answer that question, Brad, yes, you do. get to play again. And that, of course, was the goal for Mr. Brad Nelson. So Matias Leveratto, he's got to shake this one off, get his head back in the game. That was a beating, but it was Brad Nelson who ultimately won this first match. He's got one more to go to see who is going to be the champion here at Mythic Championship III. Players are going to take a short break, and we will too. We'll be back with more right after this.
My name is Eric Froelich. I'm in the Magic Pro League and the Magic Pro Tour Hall of Fame. It just so happened that my entire 5th grade class really just started getting into Magic. I wanted to go to the local game store. I went with my dad and we bought a nice little starter kit at the time. My dad ended up reading the entire rulebook, teaching me how to play, and I played with my classmates. I ended up finding myself winning and advancing all the way to the top 8 and qualifying for the Pro Tour at 13 years old. And at that point, I was just fully immersed in wanting to go to every major tournament around me. And that's what I did. I was lucky enough to have really supportive parents who found a way to make sure everything I needed to go to, I was there.
Down numbers are 3, and that's going to do it!
I'm Javier Dominguez from Spain. I'm the 2018 World Champion, and I'm a Magic Pro League competitor. I think what I like most about Magic is that you can play a lot of games, and the games are different between themselves. The game still keeps surprising you. Like, you play the game, and you run into new situations. I really feel the support of my family, my friends, my girlfriend, Spanish community. It means a lot to me because they're always trying to watch every game I play. This support means a lot because I feel like it gives me strength.
I'm Jean-Emmanuel Deprat, 24 years old, from Paris. I'm part of the Magic Pro League. I was taught the game by a cousin when I was 11. Then I started going to a local game store in Paris, and then I started going to PTQs. So after winning any major tournaments like the World Magic Cup, usually the first person I let know is my mom. When I found out I was going to be in the MPL and a full-time professional player, she was delighted. My mom believes that you should work in something that makes you happy.
So Mike Segrist holding his breath, and Francesco says,
Hey, I'm Mike Segrist, and I'm part of the Magic Pro League. I started playing Magic when I was 5th or 6th grade. My stepbrother at the time found like a $20 bill on the ground, and it was next to a game store, and he bought 4th edition like double starter deck. He brought it over to my house, and we played, and I was hooked. It has been a challenge trying to stay at the top levels, and my wife's been excellent in it, and you know, she gives me time to play when she gets home from work. She always knows that I need to stay on top of my game.
I'm Greg Kowalski, I'm 27, I'm from Poland, and I will be playing MPL. I play the Magic with friends, like going to pre-releases, play FNMs. At some point, I had progress in Magic, and now I'm here. I have a great support in terms of parents cheering for me. Even though they don't understand a single thing about Magic, they're still cheering for me. They see standings.
Welcome back to coverage of Mythic Championship III. There's a look at Magic Arena, what made it all possible here this weekend, and it is grand finals time. Once again, Brad Nelson has evened things out between himself and Matias Leveratto. Day 9, Cedric Phillips. Let's take a look at our bracket to find out how we got here this morning. And of course, we've reset things as we said, so that's why you see 2 matches over there from the grand finals.
What a drubbing this match was. I mean, this is like one of the first times I've actually seen Brad crush. He seems to just be navigating his way through tricky situations. And I mean, those matches were so fast and so clean that afterwards, he wasn't even ready for the plan to break. He's like, all right, you ready to go into the next one?
Well, after that beating that he took, pardon me, from Matias a little bit earlier, Brad said, you know what, all's fair. Let me do that to you. See how you like it. Let's get ready for the actual grand finals here. We're going to take a look at some highlights of these games. The key card in this matchup for Brad, both pre and post sideboard, is definitely Ferry, Time Raveler, because it makes Old Wilderness Reclamation a lot worse, which is what Matias tried to use to work a way towards victory, but it just didn't look like it was going to be enough.
Yeah, I mean, Teferi Time Reveler completely undoes the power of Wilderness Reclamation. And there is some really interesting tech that Leverado's incorporated into the deck, making a lot of use of utility lands, which technically play at instant speed, but they're not instants or sorceries. But I mean, even with that said, Brad Nelson just accumulated so much power with this Hero of Precinct 1 and his little pals, and then with Narset plus Teferi Time Reveler, I mean, that really puts the stranglehold on Leverado's game plan.
Brad's plan every single game of this matchup is going to be to play Hero of Precinct 1 on turn number 2 and then start playing multicolored spells, ideally Teferi or Thought Eraser, and start to pick apart the hand and make life difficult for Matias. He was able to do that in this first game, redeploying Teferi, making more 1/1 white human tokens, and then eventually crossing the finish line. The thing that Brad doesn't want to do is give Matias enough time to kind of mess around and figure out ways to get out from underneath the Teferi Stranglehold. When Hero of Precinct 1 and those 1/1s are pressuring you, it makes it too difficult for Matias to work himself out of the pickle that he's in, and that's why you saw Brad win this matchup pretty quickly, and certainly this first game.
I feel like these games really show the tenor of the matchup, which is if you get Teferi Time Reveler down and a little bit of pressure, it is hard for Nexus to really do anything at all. And really, these games, the draws, were so good for Brad.
Yeah.
And the question is, what happens when you don't get a good draw?
Well, that is the question. I mean, we have seen times when Matias was able to work through a good draw from Brad and certainly can beat the mediocre ones. For him, he's won this match, as we mentioned, in about 6 minutes earlier on in the day. We can't forget that they also played yesterday. But again, it's all about Hero of Precinct 1, and you see how important that card is, that Matias is actually going to use a Callous Dismissal so early on in the game to bounce it. Of course, Brad's going to redeploy it and then play a Thought Eraser.
A Thought Eraser and Duress, the ability to cast those both on turn 3, took one peek at the hand with the Duress and said, yeah, I can wait a little while, no big deal. You got some turn 5 plays. That's plenty of time away. And once again, the Hero Precinct 1 just poking. It's like being murdered by a hummingbird.
You see another Teferi. This isn't quite a hummingbird. It might be one of a bigger bird. It's a big problem what it is. Perhaps an albatross is the reference I'm looking for.
A murder bird, Cedric.
Well, I'll let you take care of that one. What is it, a Hydralisk? I don't really know StarCraft. That's kind of your thing.
It's a big bird. Let's go with
fair
that.
enough.
Yes.
Teferi is making life very, very difficult. Again, pre and post sideboard, Brad actually is able to shore up his deck after sideboard, get some of the removal spells out, get some more discard like Duress in, and it's for Matias. I think he's got to win the pre-sideboarded game to be able to win the match. That's a really, really big thing for him because the sideboarded games only get more difficult for him.
Yeah, and with the Hero of Precinct 1 in pals and with Matias Leveratto's final draw being an op that didn't find any solutions, Brad Nelson won with the cleanest 2-0 he's gotten yet.
This matchup, I know that Brad, like we mentioned earlier in the day, he feels confident in, but it's, that match where he lost so quickly, he's still like, I still think I'm good, Not a big deal. Magic, the games are going to play as they are, but he thinks on the whole that they are good for him. Was that last match an accurate representation? We'll have to find out because that one went very quickly. We saw Matias, when he won over Brad in 6 minutes, went quickly. I feel like it's somewhere in between.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the one-sided match for Leverado, the one-sided match for Nelson. We saw an extremely close game between them on day 2.
Yep.
Large range of possibilities for the final best of 3.
Well, we heard from Luis Salvato earlier talking about Matias Leveratto. Now we get to hear from a friend of Brad Nelson. He also lives in his basement. It's Brian Brown doing.
That's right, Maria. I'm here with Brian Brown doing. And Brian, I want to know what it's like, because we know about Brad the player. Let's hear about him as a person. What it's like to move across the country with a guy like this.
Oh, I mean, he's a horrible person, so probably a big mistake on my part, but no, in reality, Brad's great. I really enjoy being around him. He's a lot of fun, and when he decided to move out to Seattle, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna follow suit. I'm gonna live in my dad's basement. So.
I love it. That's amazing. Now, you actually are the originator of the deck Brad is playing. Kai has been giving you credit for it all day long. What does it feel like to see 2 versions of your deck make it to the finals?
It's really incredible, actually. When I won the World Championship, I played Brad's deck in that tournament, so seeing him win this tournament with my deck would just be like an awesome, come around of that story. So.
Very much so. And I want to hear what you think it would mean to Brad to take home this trophy today.
I think it would mean quite a bit because Brad has a reputation being one of the best standard players of all time, maybe the best standard player of all time. He has, a lot of Pro Tour top 8s. He was a player of the year, but he's never won a title. And I know he really wants that badly. And if he wins this tournament, that would just be the capstone to his career.
Well, thank you, Brian. Very well said. Brian, of course, is a world champion as well. So let's see if your friend gets a title for himself. Let's head over to Marshall and Paul in the booth.
Thank you, Becca. Yeah, always the beats with those two, by the way.
Well, I mean, Brian is kind of a giant troll. Like a very nice troll, still a troll.
Yeah, but they do tend to go back and forth. So what we've got now in front of us is a very straightforward situation. One match.
That's
right.
It's
just one match to decide $100,000 first place prize and an invite to the World Championship at the end of the season.
Yeah, this is huge, but
incredible.
Yeah, and both of the matches they played today were not close.
No,
right?
Not close. That first match was all Brad.
Yeah, that first match was Brad. The match that they played earlier today was all Leveratto. I mean, both of those matches were under 15 minutes. So, I think Leveratto has to just kind of shake things off, reset, and see if he can pull this one out. I mean, he was in really good shape before, and Brad, he had kind of the ideal draw for this matchup in both games 1 and 2 of that last match. So, it's not as likely, it's not super likely for him to do that again. So if Leveratto can, win the die roll, get Growth Spiral going into Wilderness Reclamation, he still has a really good shot. But if he really wants to win this matchup, he really absolutely has to take game 1 because it gets so much worse for him after sideboard.
Game 1 is our focal point here as we begin the last match of our grand finals. Let's get underway. Is it going to be Matias Leveratto from Argentina working his way from online qualifying all the way through an extremely tough field to the finals? He has one more obstacle. That obstacle, Brad Nelson, is not going to be easy for him. And it looks like Brad on the play is going to lead off with a land. He does have a copy of Hero of Precinct 1, not a whole lot to back it up beyond that.
Yeah, he kept the 5-land Precinct 1 Mortify hand. He does have Hero Precinct 1. Mortify is a nice way to interact with Wilderness Reclamation, but he does need additional threats here. He needs to find Planeswalkers or gold spells to apply enough pressure to Leveratto's life total, because right now he has nothing.
Relatively slow start here, though, for Matias as well, as it looks like turn 2 opt. He does have lands to play. Additionally, he has 2 copies of Wilderness Reclamation and a Tamio. There's levels of explosiveness hidden in this hand, but it's going to be a while.
Yeah, but Leveratto has just, a good amount of time here. And Tamio, if he just slams Tamio on turn 4, currently, Brad doesn't have an answer to that.
Wow, Brad really wanted to draw to Ferry, just the other one.
Right, yeah, definitely.
To Ferry Time Raveler off the top of the library there would have been incredible. The perfect draw for Nelson. Instead, it was to Ferry Hero of Dominaria, meaning the Brad's play for the turn, attack you for 2, play a land, and just leave up Mortify.
Brad wondering whether or not he needs to leave up Mortify, but of course he doesn't have to because the only target for Mortify is Wilderness Reclamation. I suppose actually Search for Escanta is also another option, so that's something that he could be considering, but looks like he's just choosing to keep his land tapped. Although, you know what, in this matchup, he can actually just choose to take a bunch of damage because oftentimes the game is decided when Leveratto is in a position with Reclamation and taking all of the turns with Nexus of Fate.
So he passes the turn back to Matias, who's got another copy of Opt. He just resolved another. He did find a Nexus of Fate with his draw step here, and there's a land, which I think he just wants.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's going to take that Hinterland Harbor and play it. Starting to shape up here.
Oh, yeah, and another land here for Brad Nelson. I mean, he will at least have an answer here for the first Wilderness Reclamation in that Mortify. And, if Leveratto kind of foresees that coming, he can play Tamio. But keep in mind, Mortify is just a one-of copy in Brad Nelson's deck. So Leveratto might just choose to run out the Wilderness Reclamation here. Curious to see what he's going to go with here. Is he going to go with Tamio, Collector of Tales, or Reclamation? If he does play the Tamio, I mean, he's going to be in a really good position. He's going to be able to fill up his graveyard, look for what he needs, regrow something back on the following turn with the minus ability. That also protects him from hand disruption, cards like Thought Erasure.
And that is what he's going to do. Tamio, Collector of Tales, goes on the stack. And now onto the battlefield.
Now he's got to figure out what he wants to name here.
Yeah, this is a critical juncture here in the first game. He's already got one copy of Nexus of Fate. Looks like he might be going for some repeatable card advantage here, like with a Surge, or let's see. Yeah, Surge for his Kanta. He knows that with 2 copies of Wilderness Reclamation, he can go off if he finds a Surge, but he didn't. Still a few turns away from all of that anyway. But a nice play there for Matias. He has left that Mortify stranded in hand for Nelson.
Yeah, Nelson now, it looks like he might be just like bluffing something here because he can't actually do anything.
Yeah, that's exactly what he was doing. Maybe Despark or something like that. Right. Now the land's going to hit the battlefield, and that clears the way for Ferry, Hero of Dominaria. Not what he wanted a few turns ago, but hey, he'll take it now.
Yeah, so we're going to see a minus here on Ferry on the Tamio. This now puts a little more pressure on Leveratto, but he still has plenty of life here to work with, and now he's going to be able to slam Wilderness Reclamation.
The shields are down now for Nelson, so there's 1 turn of Wilderness Reclamation untaps available here for Matias. He also can afford to play an opt beforehand.
Yeah, and the thing that Matias really just needs to find here is just a way to kind of dig through his deck. That's why you saw him name Search for Escanta off that Tamio. We do know Tamio's coming soon, however. It was tucked underneath the Teferi Hero of Dominaria, so it should be coming up in the next 2 turns.
That's right. With the opt, you'll have it next turn.
And so now Brad Nelson.
Ooh, Narset Parter of Veils was the draw step. Plus he has Teferi plus to see what he finds.
So he needs like 2 Anarchic spells, and I mean, this is why game 1 is the game that Liberado needs to win, because Brad can just draw these dead cards like Hostage Taker in this matchup.
Yeah, this works out really nicely too, because he can actually cast Narset, and then thanks to Teferi's untap ability, have Mortify available. The interesting part is there is a blink of an eye in hand for Matias to protect his Wilderness Reclamation if he'd like. That said, he has another in his hand.
Yeah, he doesn't need to. I think he's more likely to want to use Blink of an Eye to bounce Narset end of turn.
Okay.
And he's going to start out first, of course, by casting Opt because he wants to draw cards. See if he has an answer here or has something that he would like to cast. And a land here is not terrible because he has Nexus of Fate plus Wilderness Reclamation. If he draws a land here, he also knows that next turn he's going to draw Tamio, Collector of Tales. And look, he keeps a land on top.
That's right. So the opt puts that forest into hand here for Matias. Now Narset is going to minus and see what she finds. Ooh, there's Teferi Time Raveler. That's a big one.
That's huge. So now there's 2 extremely annoying threats here. And given that Leveratto has Tamio on top, he's not as concerned about the ability to not draw additional cards, and it's pretty likely that Brad wants to maybe fire off this Teferi here, although Mortify is also a very defensible option here. But if he does run out Teferi, Leveratto will now go end of turn, Blink of an Eye, bounce Teferi, untap, and then he's going to be able to have a lot of fun here. He's going to have 2 copies of Wilderness Reclamation in play. He's got that Tamio coming up too.
Well, so I wonder if Brad will minus the Teferi on the existing Wilderness Reclamation. Let's see what he does.
That is what he's going to do.
So he'll get rid of 1, but that does still leave Leveratto with no Teferi on the other side and a Wilderness.
And he won't be able to, of course, Blink of an Eye because Teferi is on the battlefield.
That's right. So that gets shut off. So things looking pretty good for Brad here, especially given that this is a game 1.
You show remorse, I'll show respect.
So Leveratto can play Blink of an Eye, bounce Teferi, play Wilderness Reclamation, but it's actually a similar situation to what we saw in the previous match where he's 1 mana short.
Because he has to do it all in his main phase.
Exactly. He's going to be 1 mana short. He's going to have access to 6 mana here. But he does have Blast Zone in play. He can actually tick up Blast Zone to 3 and eventually just get those 2 Planeswalkers off the battlefield and then choose to go off. So if Brad Nelson can't close the door quickly, Liberado might still be able to take this out.
Yeah, the Blast Zone is up to 2 now, but he needs it to be at 3. Ooh, this one's getting good.
Yeah, this is a crucial, crucial turn here.
So Matias is going over his options. He does have a window to get this Wilderness Reclamation onto the battlefield, but there's not a lot he can do with it outside of maybe working that blast zone magic, you know, get another counter on it, untap it, and set up to destroy the 2 planeswalkers, which is great, to be fair.
That's Reclamation? Oh, wait. You said Reclamation? Okay.
Matias lets Brad know, I'm going to be casting Wilderness Reclamation. Brad goes, hold on a second. All right, now you can do it.
So yeah, Brad might have actually strung together enough disruption here to kind of slow Leveratto down.
Right, because the problem is that he can't add another counter to the blast zone currently.
Right. He can float mana, untap, then put the 3rd counter on blast zone.
But then it's tapped.
But then he's going to have to wait for the following turn to deal with Narset, and now we have the Hero Precinct 1 and the tokens applying pressure.
He was 1 land short, because otherwise he could have, you know, kept that end step, put the counter on, then untapped it, and then popped it. And that would have gotten rid of those 2 planeswalkers. Now he would have still had to untap again at some point, but now he's just facing a world of pain here as these main deck cards from Brad Nelson are doing overtime for him. To Ferry plus Narset just really shuts down this deck.
Absolutely. And also keep in mind Mortify as the additional card that interacts with Reclamation. Last turn there was a window, right? Because Brad Nelson only had access to 2 mana, but now he has Mortify to deal with the Reclamation.
And D-Spark now too. So he has actually 2 answers, 1 for each Wilderness Reclamation.
Yeah, that Teferi Time Raveler was a huge, huge find.
Huge. That has screwed up everything for Matias Leveratto. And again, the thing that you note here when you watch these games play out is Brad wants a delicate combination of some way to interact or inhibit the game plan from Matias, but also apply pressure, and he is doing that. You know, Cedric was saying at the analyst desk that turn 2 Hero of Precinct 1 is critical to Brad winning, and it has been, and he's had it.
Yeah, so Brad has the option of maybe running out Hostage Taker, targeting nothing. That would basically put Leveratto dead next turn.
Adding 3 power to the board.
So that is something to consider. He still will have the mana to both Mortify and cast a D-Spark because of the untap ability from Teferi Hero of Dominaria. So that might be something he wants to consider here, try to close out the game as quickly as possible. Leveratto needs to put Blast Zone up to 3, needs to get those Planeswalkers off the battlefield, but Brad just has all the answers here.
It's really interesting watching Brad navigate these games because he actually turns this Esper Hero deck into somewhat of a tempo deck, right? He's just simply keeping Matias off balance. He's not even fully stopping his game plan. Like, he still has access to these Wilderness Reclamations, yet Brad, oh, give him a second there, looks like his headset came out. But Brad has just been able to say, I'll delay you a turn, I'll delay you another turn, I'll delay you another turn, and it's like, now you're at 5.
Right. So now Leveratto is still not out of it yet. He can get Blast Zone up to 3 counters, sacrifice it to get those Planeswalkers off the battlefield, and he has a Root Snare, so he can stay alive for an additional turn. But things not looking great given that Brad has 2 answers to those Reclamations.
Of course, those Wilderness Reclamations are the engine behind this deck. They are what give it the big advantage.
It looks like Hostage Taker is a May ability when it enters the battlefield, so
it is a must ability.
It's a must ability. So now Brad has to make a pretty big decision here. Yeah. Does he want to run out Hero Precinct 1 and only have one way to interact with Reclamation to ensure that he has a 2-turn clock, or does he want to keep up Mortify and D-Spark?
Oh, it's awkward, isn't it?
Yeah. It seems like he's in a better position if he keeps up Mortify and D-Spark, because one of the few ways he can potentially lose here is multiple copies of Wilderness Reclamation. And it looks like, yeah, he chooses not to play the hero here.
Yeah, it's got to be tough for him because he's so close to being able to. I mean, he can just simply replay the Hero of Precinct 1 and have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 exactly lethal. But he decides to take a more patient line, and that might pay off for him big time because there are 2 copies of Wilderness Reclamation floating around.
That's a Reclamation.
And this should do it here. As long as Brad Nelson sets the appropriate stops, he will have the ability to remove both of the enchantments. Leveratto will not be able to untap, and he will not be able to cast Root Snare, given that Teferi Time Raveler is on Brad Nelson's side of the board.
Okay, there's D-Spark to take out one of the Wilderness Reclamations.
Remember, Leveratto can't do anything.
Nope.
Teferi is in play.
Unlocked.
And you're going to see him a little disappointed here when that Mortify hits the table.
Leveratto's doing some counting, and Brad is thinking. It looks like the priority here is still on Matias, though. So Brad's going to wait till the last second.
Yeah, see Hooplings first, but Brad certainly wants to fire off this Mortify. Doesn't want to give Leveratto the option of sacrificing Blast Zone to get those Planeswalkers out of play.
That's
wants to
right.
really tax his mana.
Wow, this is a critical play here. The ability to deal with both copies of Wilderness Reclamation by Brad Nelson. And I'll remind you, this is the game 1. This is the hard game. This is the game where he has Tyrant Scorn still in his deck. A bunch of stuff that he just doesn't want to see. And another good draw here from Nelson has him very, very close to a victory. But I'll tell you what, this Simic deck, this is the one that makes you the most nervous in all of Standard, because you can get your opponent down to 1 and have a whole bunch of stuff going on, and then you never get another turn.
Now it's going to be Brad Nelson's turn. He's going to be able to get in for 5. Leveratto can't play any spells. So an Oath of Kaya would be able to finish this turn if he finds it.
Let's see if he does. There's Teferi Hero of Dominaria drawing him in a card. Well, he found him another copy of Narset.
I've got time.
Things looking very good for Brad, though.
Yeah, Narset gives him lots of good options, lots of good cards to find here.
Could still find it.
Right, Oath of Kaya would certainly end the game on the spot, but even
gets 4 looks at it.
Even a Thought Erasure at instant speed off Teferi Time Raveler would be great.
And he did. That's exactly what he found, Paul. Thought Erasure, limiting the options further of Matias. And Brad Nelson, he has been storming his way through this tournament. So far, Matias is the only one who's beaten him in a match. And he may have awoken the bear, because Brad has not dropped a game yet and is in really good shape to take game 1 here of our grand finals. And I mean finals this time.
So yeah, Brad probably, I mean, he doesn't even necessarily need to run out the hero, but he doesn't really have any other plays anyways. That just allows him to overload the board.
Yeah. By the way, which hero? He's got a Hero of Dominaria and he's got a Hero of Precinct 1.
Right.
He is deciding between the two, so I guess your statement was correct regardless.
Right, and given that this is kind of a lethal attack, it looks like he's also just considering running out Teferi Hero of Dominaria instead of Hero Precinct 1. If he plays it and ticks it up, he will be able to untap his lands to still cast that Thought Erasure on Leveratto's draw step.
This isn't a fight you can win. No time for a break.
Ooh, just in case.
Well, he found the Oath of Kaya. A little late there to finish the game here, but this one does look well and truly in hand. I wonder if there's any way for Matias to get out of this.
Yeah, I mean, Matias can draw land number 7 and just start casting Nexus of Fates, but that really doesn't do a whole lot.
No, we've seen that throughout the course of the tournament. Not do much. And he didn't find it anyway. He found a Growth Spiral. Here's Thought Erasure.
And that should lock it up here.
Do it. Yeah, it's only 6.
Yeah, and
Matias.
Yep.
And since he can't do anything anyway as far as casting any of these relevant spells. Remember the Root Snare even not going to get the job done because he'd have to sacrifice the Blast Zone just to be able to cast it, and he just can't do anything if he keeps having to drop lands like this.
Yeah, Teferi Time Raveler absolutely backbreaking this game.
Crushing it.
He had a chance. I mean, if Brad didn't find Time Raveler and almost any other card, you know, he would have been able to kind of go off with Wilderness Reclamation plus Tamio.
He takes blink of an eye. But we've already seen the draw step here for Leveratto, and there's nothing he can do. He looks bummed out about it, but Brad's got all the information that he needs as well.
And remember, he cannot cast anything.
No, but he can crack the Blast Zone and then cast Root Snare.
That's the only option he has, but of course, Oath of Kaya.
Yeah, Oath of Kaya in hand here for Brad Nelson is going to shut the door on game number 1, and Brad is now 1 game away from the championship. He has been the dominant force in both the MPL and in this tournament, and he's on the verge of greatness here. $100,000 up top for Brad, and of course that coveted seat at the World Championship at the end of the season. This is it. Now, if you're sitting in Leveratto's seat, man, the stress must be incredible. He has to get himself together and try to find a win. You know, he's been playing well, right? I think everybody's been really impressed by his prowess, specifically with this deck, but it just has not come together for him.
Yeah. And I want to talk about Brad just in that game 1, choosing to keep, you know, what looks like it might be, it kind of looked like it was a risky keep, right? I mean, it was 5 lands with Hero Precinct 1, but Brad just realizing that it's extremely important to put pressure and just, you know, knowing that at some point down the line, he's going to draw a gold spell, he's going to draw something to produce an extra token to eventually try to finish the game, but he really, really crucially needs to have that to Hero Precinct 1 on turn 2, especially in game 1, to have a chance.
Brad might look calm. He's not. I can guarantee that. He definitely is feeling it. This is a huge moment for him over the course of the next game or maybe 2 to see if he can lock this thing up. You know, professional Magic players can play for years and years and years and never get that top tier tournament victory. Brad was our player of the year in 2010. He did not win a Pro Tour that year. He has never won a Pro Tour. You know, this is now a Mythic Championship level event for $100,000. This is a career defining moment for somebody like Brad. And I tell you, for the, again, I call him a relative newcomer because Matias has been playing Magic for a long time, but has really sort of bashed in to the upper echelons with this tournament, and what a start to the career it would be for him if he can manage to snipe 2 games here from the standard master Brad Nelson. How does this look as we develop game number 2?
I mean, Leveratto has a nice start. This is kind of the, we haven't seen him start with a turn 2 mana accelerant in a while, and now he has a lot of different options. And I think what he's going to look to do here, he's going to play out Search for Escanta, play out Simic Guildgate, because now this ensures that he can play Nyssa, who shakes the world next turn. Of course, Brad knowing that. Brad, knowing that, is going to be casting Thought Erasure to get that Nyssa out of hand, but things still not looking horrible here for Leveratto. He has that Chemistries Insight in hand. He's going to be able to draw additional cards, and he does have a Search for Escanta that is going to get, you know, 1 step closer to flipping every single turn.
Did you see him hovering over his library? He's like, come on. He does not want a second copy of Paradise Druid. There's a Nexus of Fate. Now, he's not quite to that point yet.
Yeah, I wonder if Leveratto's even going to attack. I like this.
You're right.
I like keeping it back, protecting the Paradise Druid from a potential Teferi or Oath of Kaya, because it's more important to have Paradise Druid available to cast, you know, your top-end cards like Nexus of Fate.
Of course, this is just understanding, you know, what your deck is fundamentally about, and it's not about chipping in for 2 damage. It's about getting a lot of mana and then abusing some of the interactions that you can get with Nexus of Fate. So, smart plays here. Yeah, Leveratto passes a turn back.
Yeah, because look, if he, let's say he attacked, if Brad Nelson plays Teferi, now he can bounce the Paradise Druid and he'll have a Teferi in play. If he doesn't attack, if Brad Nelson plays Teferi, the only target he has, if he wants to bounce something to Search for Escanta, then Paradise Druid can finish off Teferi Time Raveler. So
kind of forces Brad to just plus.
Yeah, that's basically what he's going to be looking to do if he plays out Teferi.
And he did. There's Teferi Time Raveler. There is going to be a response here. Okay, there's Wilderness Reclamation. This is starting to get interesting here. The pieces of the puzzle coming together now.
Wow,
Though it does look like Brad is willing to give up his copy of Teferi just to get that search for his Kanta off the battlefield even temporarily.
And Leverado is certainly going to be attacking Paradise Druid, get that backbreaking Teferi Time Raveler off the battlefield. Then you can follow that up with a Wilderness Reclamation, untap, cast Chemistries Insight, or just run out of search for Kanta. Lot on the line here, so Leverado just making sure he plans this entire turn perfectly.
First things first.
Yeah,
you got to go, Teferi.
Little T off the battlefield.
Yeah, that card is a nightmare for this Simic deck, so he really needs to take care of that permanent while he can.
Yeah, I imagine he's going to look to kill Teferi Time Raveler, play Mobilize District, cast Wilderness Reclamation, untap, and then cast Chemistries Insight, discarding Breeding Pool.
Teferi Time Raveler in the bin. Here's a Wilderness Reclamation now. There's a Mobilized District.
And he can even draw a Negate here off the Chemistries Insight, which would be very, very nice for him because Brad Nelson does have Mortify for the Reclamation.
That's right. Now that didn't happen this time, but tight play there. And by the way, he did exactly what you said, Paul. I'm just going to have to note that for the for the permanent record. Nice.
Not a lot of other options.
Hey, man, I know it looks easy to you, but there's a lot of people at home that are going, oh.
So this is a nice sequence here from Brad still. I mean, he gets to play Hero Precinct 1 and into Mortify, so puts a little pressure onto the battlefield and answers a very, very important threat in Wilderness Reclamation. He might even go for the upkeep Wilderness Reclamation. Oh, it looks like he's going to actually just keep it in play and maybe look to fire it off prior to the end step trigger. He is also, of course, concerned about Search for Kanta that he knows about in Leverado's hand.
Yeah, they're both problematic and they enable each other. One of them's better on its own. Search is something that you can take advantage of if it's all you have once it transforms, where Wilderness Reclamation doesn't do anything on its own. You do need help, but this whole deck is built towards it, so tough decisions here.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, I mean, Brad might just look to kill that Search for Kanta. If he kills the Search for Kanta, I mean, sure, Liberado has a ton of mana, but he doesn't really have a whole lot to do with it here.
It is kind of interesting. He is going to take the more conventional line here and just get rid of the Wilderness Reclamation with that Mortify. That Mortify has come in very handy here in the Grand Finals, by the way. I think I'd rather have that here than the Ugin that we've seen do really good work throughout the course of the tournament, but here, Mortify's been clutch. So back to you, Brad Nelson.
And now we see Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, as an option. Not quite sure how many cards are in Leverato's graveyard.
Yeah, that is the question, isn't it?
If it's close, for example, if he has 6 cards in graveyard, I could totally see Brad considering minusing here on Search for Kanta. Otherwise, just take it up, draw some cards, find some more disruptive elements.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to play it safe here and get that Search for Kanta tucked away. So once again, Brad has been able to, one at a time, deal with the problematic permanents on the other side of the battlefield, but the pressure is mounting. He has Hero of Precinct 1 and can start attacking, and you can see the respect, actually, that the future Planeswalkers gets, it looks like, or maybe even just Teferi, as he's going to max out and put 2 more counters on the blast zone. So he's either trying to get up to Teferi Hero of Dominaria range, or he's going to leave it at 3 for the problematic Planeswalkers that Brad can play in the future.
So Liberado can just play Nexus of Fate here, play Memorial to Genius, and just kind of see what else he can draw here, develop his board a little bit.
Okay.
Doesn't have a whole lot of other options. I wouldn't be surprised if he fires it off. I mean, Teferi did minus on Search for Kanta, so maybe he wants to draw the search first. And it looks like instead he's considering just activating Mobilized District to basically force Brad to chump with one of his 1/1 tokens here on in order to protect Teferi Hero of Dominaria. Or maybe even nothing. I mean, you know, it's possible to just take Blast Zone up to 5. Get Teferi off the board. Brad doesn't have a ton of action here.
No, he has some pressure mounting, but it's not incredible. Again, you'd see the quick look there from Matias. He's got that Search for Kanta, not on the top of his library, but 1 card below that. Yeah, he's just going to pass a turn back here, Paul. Another copy of Hero of Precinct 1 for Nelson. This is getting interesting. Now Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, is going to plus, and it's Dovin's Veto, so this is really getting interesting now.
Wow.
So let's see, does he have enough mana? Yeah, he does, doesn't he? He can just go Hero. If he really wants, he could fire off Oath. That does give him 3 damage plus 2 additional 1/1 attackers. The Mobilized District playing defense here, though, is pretty annoying if you're sitting in Brad's seat.
I mean, one thing Brad can try to do is just offer to throw away one of his 1/1 tokens. What he can do is attack with both the tokens, make Leverado activate Mobilized District, then cast Hero of Precinct 1 into Oath of Kaya to kill off the Mobilized District, and then he'll still have access to Dovin's Veto once Teferi untaps your lands.
Oh, I'm loving that line. The question is, will Matias bite? Here it comes. Here's the 2 1/1s. Attacking in. No,
he will not.
He didn't even think about it. Look, he's got 20 life to work with, and he figures it's not worth it to risk it. So smart play. Once again, Leverado impresses.
We're going to see Blasphemy go to 5 here. He needs to get that Teferi off the battlefield.
Yeah, that is probably the more pressing thing, too, is that he says, well, I'd love to eat one of these tokens, but I need to get Teferi out of here.
Yep, definitely.
So much pressure on the game anytime Teferi Hero of Dominaria is there, because it's just every single turn, relentless card advantage for the player.
Is he going to do it, or is he going to... Oh, I see.
He's going to bank a turn here.
Yeah, try to force a counter, and wow, I mean, Brad is now countering it, getting 2 tokens, but now Leverado...
Hey...
has some live draws potentially.
Yeah, he does. Narset Parter of Veils could help out too.
And certainly firing off Narset here. Dig and see what he can find. Wilderness Reclamation could be an interesting card. I mean, he's got that Memorial to Genius, he's got the Blast Zone, so and a ton of lands in play.
Yeah, this is one of the decks that takes advantage of the lands in Standard that kind of operate as spells. As you can see, the 3 on the left-hand side for Leverado.
That is a Wilderness Reclamation.
Hello.
Negate is also interesting, but I think he just really needs to find more cards. So I think he wants to go with the Reclamation here, draw some cards off that Memorial to Genius.
Okay, things are starting to get very intense here because that Wilderness Reclamation can unlock a lot of action here.
A lot of potential.
Yes, very much so. Yet it is currently unknown whether he's going to be able to get there or if it's going to be Brad Nelson with a huge army.
Okay.
2 copies of Hero of Precinct 1 and 4 1/1s are going to slam the door on this game quite quickly if Leverado can't find something very soon. So here we go. Wilderness Reclamation trigger goes on the stack. The Memorial to Genius is worth 2 cards, but he's just going to go ahead and let it go. He still needs to consider the Blast Zone to get Teferi off the battlefield.
So Brad Nelson has Oath of Kaya here, so he probably wants to cast it first, kill Narset Parter Veils so that he can draw cards with Big Teferi here, Hero of Dominaria in play.
Okay, there's that Oath of Kaya, and again, 2 more 1/1 creatures off of the pair of Hero of Precinct 1 is building out an immense board now for Nelson. And there goes Narset. Now he can plus Teferi Hero of Dominaria. Let's see what he finds. He found a Watery Grave.
I mean,
he could cast an, I guess.
Leverado still has a shot here. I mean, he's got that Memorial to Genius. Brad Nelson can play land Teferi Hero of Dominaria and tuck the Wilderness Reclamation just as an additional source of interaction. Of course, Leverado can choose to let that resolve, then choose to draw cards off the Memorial to Genius, then he will still be able to draw Wilderness Reclamation. So if the top 2 cards are highly impactful cards, cards like Chemistries Inside, maybe even Biogenic Ooze, he might be able to come back here.
Okay, so this is a huge moment down the stretch because right now Brad Nelson has built out an absolutely massive board, and there are going to be 2 cards in between Wilderness Reclamation and the top of the library here, and what those 2 cards are going to dictate probably the outcome of this game. And if they're not good, that means we will have a champion. If they are good, we could be looking at a game 3. Let's see how this plays out. Here's Teferi on the minus.
I think Leverado wants that Wilderness Reclamation, so he's not drawing in response. So it's really what those top 2 cards are.
All right, let's find out. He's going to take a big hit here. Brad is deciding how his attacks look, and it looks like it's everybody into the red zone. Can Leveratto even afford to trade off Paradise Druid for a Hero of Precinct 1 at this point? Well, he's going to find out because he wants to know what those cards are before he makes this decision. So this is
really big.
Memorial to Genius.
This is going to determine it here. This is going to be huge. What are we going to find off the Memorial? Nexus?
He found Search for Azcanta and Opt. The next card is Wilderness Reclamation, of course.
That's going to be huge. If he can find a Nexus of Fate off this Opt, he can go Wilderness Reclamation, Search into Opt, and if he finds Nexus, then he's going to have Wilderness Reclamation plus Search for Azcanta going.
And we've seen how that goes. That will give him numerous looks at many cards from the top of his library with Search for Azcanta.
Does he want to block here? It looks like he's going to have plenty of mana here, given that Wilderness Reclamation is on top.
Wow, this is going to get really intense here. Let's see what happens. He's taking a good hit of damage. Looks like about 6. Yeah.
But keep in mind, this is not a lethal attack next turn. That's an attack for 10. And
You're right.
Liberado is at 12, so he still has a little bit of time. Brad actually needs to find something here to kind of try to close it out here. And Liberado has a shot here to maybe potentially close it out this turn.
All right, this is a big Opt. Let's see what he finds. Hinterland Harbor's not it. Put that on the bottom. Another Hinterland Harbor. That wasn't it. So now he gets to just play these 2 cards out, but he doesn't have anything else going on. But Brad doesn't have lethal.
He doesn't. And remember, he has that mobilized district to block as well.
That's right. So Brad not able to get through.
So he can block Hero Precinct 1. Even if Brad draws something like an Oath of Kaya, it won't be enough. It will be 11 damage.
Okay, it was an isolated chapel, but we still have to Ferry.
This is super close.
To plus. Let's see what happens here. Game 2, potentially to decide.
He misses.
He brick. That's 2 lands in hand. Now, for Brad Nelson, he is going to attack with everything. The district can jump onto the blocking row there and get in front of the Hero of Precinct 1.
And we're going to see a flipped Search for Azcanta with Wilderness Reclamation.
Okay, that's huge. That is going to give Matias Leveratto a lot of looks to see if he can chain together something. If he misses, he's going to lose, and Brad Nelson will be your champion.
All right. Also, he gets kind of a surveil here with the Search for Azcanta.
Of course, and he needed it because that was another island, not what he wants to see. So he's going to transform.
That's not what he wanted.
That wasn't it there. That was his draw step, that Search for Azcanta. So now he's going to go ahead and look. He finds another Wilderness Reclamation.
That's actually not bad. That's another activation here.
Right.
And he has to announce this.
And Brad can do nothing. He is left completely helpless at this point. So it's going to be Wilderness Reclamation, land, and he's going to start moving to his end step where he's going to untap his lands and activate that Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. Now 2 more times. He has to find something in that many looks.
And Liberado deciding whether or not he wants to play Search, but he's choosing not to because if he doesn't find a Nexus of Fate here, he's just going to lose.
That's
so
right.
He just wants maximum mana because now he can find cards like Chemistries inside and use that mana too.
Okay,
Tamio's not going to get it done.
Tamio is not it. He needs something that he can cast right now. Can he find a Nexus of Fate?
He needs to find something here with this Azcanta the Sunken Ruin.
Here it goes. He only found an Opt. We get to keep the sweat alive.
Pressure. Oh, look
Here
at
he
this.
goes.
Here we go.
Can he find anything with this Opt? It's blink of an eye.
That's another card to draw. I mean, can he stay alive with it? Is it better to just put it on the bottom?
That's the question here. It doesn't look like he can stave off defeat with 8 tokens facing him down.
Right, he has a mobilized district to block 1. I think he just wants the bottom here.
Okay, here it is.
There it is.
He needs to find something.
Oh,
and it's Nexus of Fate off the top of the
my
God! He got there. What a huge draw. And
He's
now
still alive.
he gets to do it again.
Brad,
now this is not over.
Oh my goodness. He is... I mean, Liberado is in really good shape. He has so many looks now. Double Wilderness Reclamation, Tamio Collector of Tales, 3 activations from Azcanta the Sunken Ruin.
Wow, what an insane turn of events. Matias Leveratto, 1 card
and he
away
finds
from a
another
loss,
one.
And he immediately gets the Nexus of Fate.
God,
and that's game number 2 going to Matias Leveratto. And Brad Nelson can do nothing but smile at that incredible game 2.
The last
possible
card off an opt that's scryed to the bottom.
Wow, Matias, have a sip of that drink, buddy, because you earned it. The full sweat for everybody at home and here in the building. And we're going to get, of course, the one game to decide who our champion is. It's hard to remember sometimes that these players are playing for $100,000, real money. That top deck could have just made Leveratto like 50K.
No, even more, right? Because the winner gets an invite into the World Championships.
Goodness sakes. All right, well, the next time you're at F&M and your opponent top decks on you, just think of Brad Nelson. Now, to be fair, though, to Leveratto, he had a lot of looks there, multiple activations of that Escanta the Sunken Ruin. It's just a full sweat that happened.
But if you look, I mean, Leveratto shaved on a Nexus of Fate. He's only got 3 in his
he has
deck.
3 post-board, that's right. Oh, my God.
Be still, my beating heart.
Wow, okay. Let's gear up. We're not done here yet. We've got a game to decide it all. And you gotta like Brad Nelson's chances here. He's gonna be on the play, and it's a sideboarded game where he has a bunch of disruption to get in the way. Let's see how these opening hands look. This is gonna be critical. Negate, yeah, probably a keep, no ramp there. And then a Duress into a Narset. Is that good enough for Brad?
I mean, I think he's going to keep it here. Narset is very, very strong. It's going to allow him to dig for multiple cards. Narset is usually going to be safe here.
How about that search for Escanta off the top of the library for Matias?
Oh, but I mean, Brad has a lot of disruption here. This game might go a little bit long, and Matias really needs to put some lands together. He does have that Nyssa who shakes the world, but only 2 lands. So he actually really wants that search for Escanta to help him find those lands. So
I think Brad might say no.
Right. Curious to see what Brad goes for here. This is a big decision. If I mean, at the same time, Search for Escanta is one of the most impactful cards in this matchup. It's really hard to get rid of. Brad has that 1 copy of Mortify to actually kill it.
Right. So it's good late game and it's good now.
Right.
Got a target on its back. There's no doubt about that. Let's see what Brad decides. Brad is, of course, next level.
Ooh, okay.
He's going to take it.
And
he's going to put Dovin's Veto in his graveyard off of Surveil. Land off the top of the library, though, for Leveratto.
So Liberado doesn't necessarily want to give away the fact that he drew a land, but he also doesn't want to take 2 damage off the breeding pool.
It's not worth it. Yeah, that damage is going to come down anyway. So, or excuse me, that land is going to come down either way. So he's just going to give up that temporary information disadvantage for 2 life.
Nice little turn here for Brad Nelson. I mean, he can go Duress. Leverado will certainly negate it, and then he can, and then Brad can respond with Dovin's Veto, and then take that Narset part of Veils out of Leverado's hand, which means then Leverado's just left with, you know, a 5-drop, a 7-drop, and a Callous Dismissal.
That's right. Also, I misspoke a turn ago. The Dovin's Veto was put back on top of the library from Brad. That's what he drew for the turn.
Sure.
Of course, that is one of his ways. You know, he's got hand disruption and Dovin's Veto to interact with things either in hand or on the stack. But he's just going to leave up Dovin's Veto and pass the turn back. Another land off the top of the library means that Brad has perfect information still about what's going on in Matias's hand. And this one's a little slower. Now, one thing that I'm going to note here, Paul, that's different from the other games that Brad has won is that there's no hero on the battlefield.
Right, we're kind of playing more of a heads-up control matchup. You know, without the hero, this deck really doesn't play that many creatures. So, you know, hero is kind of the ideal start that you want, but now we're going to be playing kind of more of a grind fest here. It's going to be hand disruption, counter magic, who can get ahead on cards, who draws more lands. That's how this game is going to play out.
Right, Planeswalker-centric type stuff. Search for Escanta's the draw step here.
That's big, and Leverado is probably just going to run out Search for Escanta here with Negate backup, and Brad can't be that happy here.
He can just veto it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Can't be countered.
Dovin says no.
And I think he wants to go for that here, although, you know, there's a lot of really powerful cards here in Leverado's hand. Oh, and it looks like he's going to let it resolve here because he's more concerned about that Narset and Nyssa who shakes the world.
Okay, there's D-Spark off the top of the library. Now Brad can run out a Narset of his own.
Yes, he can. However, Liberado does have the negate.
Yeah,
does Brad want to lead with Duress and see if the negate happens?
Seems reasonable. It would leave him without Dovin's Veto for the turn, so not sure how important that is to Brad at this point. I would assume quite important. Again, he does know all of the cards now in Matias's hand. So to me, that's extremely dangerous if I'm sitting in Matias's seat. Just, I mean, not that he can do anything about it, but, you know, letting a player of Brad's caliber know everything that's going on is really detrimental.
Matias really wanting lands here.
Yeah, he puts Tamio in the graveyard and then does draw a land. Here comes Narset.
So he's going to run this out. Brad, I mean, I think he's going to counter this one because he's got D-Spark for Nyssa, who shakes the world, and Narset will give Liberado the ability to kind of, you know, draw 2 cards.
Brad's still sitting on that Duress. Has not found an opportunity where he decided to fire it off.
Yeah, so now this is actually lining up pretty well. I mean, he will lose the Narset. He can go Duress, Narset, and keep up D-Spark. He now has 6 mana. However, Liberado is going to negate the Duress, so Liberado will have the ability to play Nyssa and activate. Brad will have the immediate answer to Nyssa in D-Spark, but Liberado will still have that 3/3 animated land.
Which will finish off Narset.
Right.
Okay, so that is a line of play that Brad perhaps does not want to explore.
Maybe he wants to just bait the negate by running out Narset, then playing Duress on Nyssa to get that out of the hand.
That's interesting. Yeah, if he's willing to give up Narset just to get that negate out of hand, that would work. It would also leave him with D-Spark in hand for the next big thing, like a Wilderness Reclamation.
Right. Because, you know, Brad does need to be a little more proactive here. That Search for Azcanta is kind of a ticking time bomb, right? As cards continue to fill up Liverado's graveyard, once that card flips, Brad's in a ton of trouble.
That's right. So he did decide to go for the Duress now, which does get negated. Now here's Narset.
He wants a hand disruption spell off of this. He wants Duress or Thought Erasure, and he finds Thought Erasure.
Thought Erasure. That is exactly what he wanted to hit. And now he can protect his Narset and take the biggest threat off the battlefield for next turn by taking it out of hand here, leaving him with just Nexus of Fate and Callous Dismissal.
Oh, wow! Nyssa, who shakes the world off the top. This has happened multiple times. Oh my goodness, he's not going to be able to animate.
Brad can do, once again, nothing but laugh. He's like, I set it up perfect, and it was Nyssa.
Had it.
Oh, wow. Nyssa is going to animate a land, and that, of course, means that Narset is going to depart. Now, D-Spark in hand here can take care of Nyssa, but Brad really had sort of maneuvered this entire game for that setup, and that top deck Nyssa
was so
fantastic
big
for him. And here's
Oh
Wilderness
my goodness.
Reclamation. Brad has nothing left in his hand.
He's going to have Wilderness Reclamation with Search for Azcanta getting ever so close to flipping with Nexus of Fate in hand.
This one is slipping away from Nelson and moving right towards Matias Leverado's direction very quickly.
Brad needs to find an answer.
Okay, Ferry, Hero of Dominaria gives him options.
And now we have to check how many cards are in Leverado's graveyard. Does he want to tick up Ferry? If he minuses Ferry, the land can take it out.
Getting attacked by islands, not where the control player wants to be, generally speaking.
Yeah, he really wants to find, you know, Mortify or even Teferi Time Raveler, some disruptive element.
$100,000 on the line, one game. This is it.
I mean, talk about clawing back here.
Unbelievable
from
stuff.
That last game.
We're going to cast Ferry. We knew that part was coming. What are you going to do with it? Is it just sending the Wilderness Reclamation or the Search back into the library?
He's drawing a card.
He's going to draw. Okay, so he knows he needs to get
something.
something.
Oh, and that's a Teferi Time Raveler.
Found Teferi Time Raveler. The last two draw steps.
He can bounce the land,
great.
too, to protect his Teferis, or he can choose to bounce, you know, Wilderness Reclamation to prevent a giant Nexus of Fate.
And that's what he's going to do. That does mean, though, that Time Raveler's not going to stick around on the battlefield. Oath of Kaya was what he drew, so he can take care of that island next turn,
He needs a land. If he finds a land, he can go, let's see, Wilderness Reclamation into Callous Dismissal. Actually, no, the land itself can just kill off Teferi Time Raveler.
That's right. Teferi Time Raveler is not going to be on this battlefield any longer.
So Liberado will still be able to run out Wilderness Reclamation and cast Nexus of Fate if he chooses to keep that land on top.
And that's certainly what he's considering right now. Yeah, he wants that island. This lets him take down Teferi Time Raveler and have a good shot at a big chunk of loyalty off of Teferi as well. Other Teferi, I should say.
You said Reclamation? Yes.
This is it. We're going to see Nexus of Fate being cast here.
So tap some lands to float. They all untap. And he's going to cast Nexus. Let's see what he draws for the turn. He doesn't want that. Are we transforming? No, not yet. Ooh, Tamio, Collector of Tales. Not as good as Nexus of Fate, but pretty darn good.
Yeah, and he's now going to use... Oh, I think he's going to name Nexus of Fate. He could have also considered returning Negate from graveyard to hand.
He
But
named it. Did he
Nexus
hit one?
of Fate.
No. He missed. That means that Brad is going to get to untap here with Teferi unless Matias wants to use Callous Dismissal for some reason.
Yeah, but Brad's still in a lot of trouble here.
He is
Needs to
way
find
behind
lots of
at this
answers.
point. That's right. And here's Memorial to Genius as well. And he did find another copy of Nexus, but the lands have already been untapped, so that's going to have to sit in hand for now. The Elder Spell for Nelson.
Yeah, probably firing that off, right? Using the Elder Spell, get that Tamio off the battlefield. Then he can actually minus Teferi to get Wilderness Reclamation or Surge off the battlefield.
Oh,
Probably
great
the
point,
Reclamation.
Paul.
Then he can also play Oath of Kaya to get that land off the battlefield. So this actually buys Brad a lot of time.
The Elder Spell enabling some pretty significant interactions here. Huh. Here's Oath.
And I like running out Oath first. This lets you play around Negate because Liberado had access to 2 mana. Now we're going to see Elder Spell and Tamio, Teferi minus Wilderness Reclamation. This means that Liberado cannot play Nexus of Fate next turn. However, he's probably at this point going to be able to flip that Surge for Azcanta.
Does feel like that, doesn't it?
Oh, never mind.
He actually went for the Surge. Biogenic
Wow,
Ooze.
Biogenic Ooze. Why take extra turns if you can just play Biogenic Ooze, make an extra token? That's 9 power on the battlefield this turn.
Holy smokes. Biogenic Ooze plus Wilderness Reclamation is one of the combos that this deck can go off with. It's a little different than the taking every turn for the rest of the game, but it is very powerful.
And the Esper Hero deck has a pretty tough time just against a very wide board. Brad needs to find Teferi Time Raveler to bounce Oath of Kaya to get that Biogenic Ooze off the battlefield, because once that Ooze becomes a 4/4, he has far less ways to deal with it.
It's out of range. So again, the pressure is on Nelson as Matias has been able to continually come up with the things that he needs.
There's another Ooze here, and we got 9 power and 9 toughness in play. What can Brad find here?
He needs to find something off of this Teferi Hero of Dominaria. It's getting to desperation mode here, and it's T-Spark.
Okay.
He can kill the Ooze with that.
He can kill the Ooze, however, there's still 6 power in the battlefield, and now he's going to lose his Teferi. And we still know Surge for Azcanta is 2 cards away on top of Leveratto's deck.
So some good news for Brad, but a lot of bad news. A Nexus of Fate in between as well. Now he's going to go down to 17 and take 3.
So he has 2 Nexus of Fates with Wilderness Reclamation. That's 18 points. Wait, hold on. Could he not have cast Callous Dismissal and have just won the game?
Just won the game because he would have had 7, 14, 21.
Exactly. That's a 3-turn call with the 2 Nexus of Fates and Wilderness Reclamation. He could have just won the game.
3, 6, 7.
14, 21.
He was at 22 then, right? Because he just took 3.
No, he gained 2 life because Oath of Kaya triggered. So he was at.
You're right, Paul.
He was at 20 life?
Yeah, you pay 2 mana, you bounce something, you get a 1/1. You have 3 lands untapped. You tap all 3 of them. Wilderness Reclamation triggers. You tap all of them. And you cast Nexus of Fate. You attack the next turn, you do the same thing again, and that is lethal.
Oh my.
A slight opening here for Brad Nelson.
There is a chance now here for Brad.
Brad drew Teferi Hero of Dominaria. big moments here in the deciding game for Mythic Championship III, $100,000 on the line.
But this should be over, though.
This should be it,
This should be it, because next turn, Liberado still has the option of playing Search for Azcanta, flow 3 mana, untap, cast Nexus of Fate, and that should seal the deal.
The double Nexus of Fate in hand could lead Matias Leveratto all the way from Argentina on Arena to here under the lights, and a championship in his favor. An incredible run by Matias. Let's see if he can finish things off. There's Wilderness Reclamation, and here comes the first Nexus of Fate. Brad's at 13.
And Search for Azcanta's going to flip too, giving you more draws.
And of course another land. Transform that. Forest off the top of the library. He's going to Azcanta right now into an opt.
Callous Dismissal will ensure that Brad Nelson dies. Just making sure he runs the numbers here. He has plenty of lands. He can just Callous Dismissal, Oath of Kaya, attack Brad for 6, then next turn attack for 7, and Leverado has this. He's going to win.
Leverado has Mythic Championship 3 in his grasp. All he needs to do is fire off one more Nexus of Fate, and he's got lethal, and that is going to do it. Matias Leveratto works his way through an incredible field of top-tier professionals, and he is your champion. Congratulations, Matias.
My goodness, what a game. He was so close to dead on game 2. He looked through every single possible card to get to the point where he could find, with the last remaining card to see, he found Nexus of Fate to come back in game 2, and then game 3 taking it down. Wow.
Unbelievable. Faces down the standard master. He gave himself the best shot. He had that one match buffer and he needed it. Brad Nelson took him all the way to the very limit. But at the end of the day, it is Matias Leveratto hoisting that trophy here in Vegas. Congratulations, Matias. What a victory for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that Nyssa who shakes the world off the top after Brad would also had to get a little fortunate to find that thought erasure to get to Nyssa. Finding that was perfect.
Critical.
That gave him the pressure that allowed him to take out the Teferi Time Raveler and let him basically do anything that he wanted. And Brad, you know, he found some Teferis, drew some cards, but ultimately wasn't able to find the answers. And then we saw the power of Search, Wilderness Reclamation taking it down.
All right, day 9 is going to introduce our champion.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of Mythic Championship 3 is Matias Leveratto! What a series! I mean, I have to ask right away, what's going through your mind right now?
I have no idea. Like, that the deck loves me, and I had a great top deck in game 2, and it was amazing.
You know, I want to zoom way back into the past when you first signed up for the qualifier for this. What was your expectation going in?
I was feeling good about the qualifier, and I knew that if I came here, maybe I can top 16, but well, this supersedes everything.
Well, I have to ask what your reaction was after the first best of 3, where Brad Nelson won very straightforwardly 2-0. What was going through your mind?
Like, I've never lost 2 times in a row with this deck, so I can lose this one, but the next one is going to be mine.
And, you know, there's a big change of pace that we all saw when you were playing in that last best of 3. You were taking so long for every single decision. Did something change between the first and the second series?
No, I didn't want to misclick and don't forget the face or anything and throw it all away because of a mistake, so I was trying to keep focus and do my best.
What are your thoughts on Brad Nelson as a player? You played him so many times. First, to be able to get through to day 3, and then you started off the day, and then you fought in the finals, and then you fought in the rematch of the finals. What was it like playing against Brad Nelson so many games in a row?
Like, it was fun because he was a really nice guy and the games were friendly, but he's a great player and his deck is good against mine, so that part was kind of difficult, but I don't know.
I have to ask, now that you've won the championship, how are you going to spend the rest of the day, man? We're in Vegas.
Party hard.
All right. Mr. Leveratto, any final words for your fans?
That I think I'm trying to play the same deck in Modern in Barcelona.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to once again give an enormous congratulations to Matias Leveratto going through the Open qualifiers through day 1 on to day 2 and now winning first place in Mythic Championship III, $100,000 and an invite to the World Championship at the end of the season. From all of us here at the coverage team, we want to thank you so much for joining us at Mythic Championship 3. You don't have to wait long for the next one. In one short month, Mythic Championship 4 will be taking place in Barcelona, July 26th to July 28th. Until then, play some Magic, have fun. Cheers.